Imagine being so good at what you do that the world's biggest superpower fears your talent. This week, Donald Trump told Google and Microsoft to stop hiring Indians. Not Chinese, not Europeans, Indians. Why? Because the Indian mind is no longer just coding in the background. It's now building the future of artificial intelligence, space, and technology. On a warm afternoon in Washington, at a high-profile artificial intelligence summit filled with the brightest minds in tech, Donald Trump stood behind the podium, adjusted the mic, and dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves across Silicon Valley and straight into the heart of India. With the cameras flashing and executives from Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI in the room, he said it, loud and clear: American companies must stop hiring Indians. For a moment the room froze, not because they didn't hear it, but because they couldn't believe what they had just heard. This wasn't a vague political jab. This was a direct command to the world's most powerful tech companies to freeze out Indian talent, the very backbone of their success. Trump didn't stop there. He accused tech giants of being unpatriotic. He said they had lost touch with American values. He pointed fingers at Google for building offices in India, slammed Microsoft for hiring abroad, and accused Apple of manufacturing in China. In his words, these companies were built with American freedom, on American soil, and now they're investing in India, building in China, and stashing profits in Ireland. And then came the real agenda: hire Americans, think American, work for America. On the surface, this might look like another America First moment, but let's decode what just happened. Trump didn't say don't hire foreigners. He didn't say stop outsourcing. He said stop hiring Indians. That's targeted, that's intentional, that's revealing. It shows where the real fear lies. Because among all the global talent pools, it's Indian engineers, Indian coders, Indian AI specialists, Indian leaders, who have become the most dominant force in tech. Just look at the data. Over 70% of H-1B visas, the golden ticket to tech jobs in the US, go to Indians. From Google's Sundar Pichai to Microsoft's Satya Nadella, from chip designers to AI lab researchers, Indian minds have reshaped the global tech landscape, and now they are no longer just the workers. They are the leaders, the strategists, the innovators. That's what makes Trump nervous. He's not just fighting a political battle, he's fighting a psychological war against India's rise. Because Indian excellence has reached a level where it can no longer be ignored or controlled. Let's ask the question no one in Washington dares to answer publicly: why Indians? Why did Donald Trump single out Indian professionals when addressing America's most powerful tech companies? Not Chinese, not Mexicans, not Europeans, Indians. The answer is uncomfortable and powerful. Because Trump doesn't fear immigrants. He fears intellectual dominance. He fears a non-Western mind outperforming the Western system. And in the last 2 decades, no group has risen faster, performed better, and disrupted harder in tech than Indians. Just look at the hard facts. Over 70% of H-1B visas, the specialized work visas for high-skilled talent, go to Indian nationals. In top tech firms, from Google to Microsoft, from Intel to IBM, the leadership bench is filled with Indian-origin executives. Indian engineers, coders, and AI scientists now form the backbone of Silicon Valley's innovation pipeline. And we're not talking about low-wage outsourcing. That era is long gone. This is a new generation of Indian minds who aren't just solving problems. They're creating new paradigms in artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, chip design, and clean energy. These are the minds who built GPT models, who designed Intel's next-gen architecture, who are laying the foundation for the future of space tech and climate AI. Trump sees that. And for a man obsessed with American exceptionalism, watching non-Americans excel within America's own system triggers a deep instinctive insecurity. Because it reveals a truth he can't admit on stage: the future of American technology depends on Indian intelligence. Without Indians, big tech slows down. Without Indian talent, the US loses its edge in innovation, in patents, in global influence. The dominance of Google, the evolution of Microsoft, the resilience of Apple's supply chain, they're all connected to Indian problem solvers, who work quietly, relentlessly, and with extreme precision. But here's the twist: these Indian minds are no longer dependent on American visas or validation. They're building unicorns back home. They're leading AI research in Bangalore and Pune. They're scaling startups in Singapore, Dubai, and London. And that scares Trump even more. Because the global flow of talent, once centralized in the US, is now decentralizing, and India is emerging as the new intellectual superpower. The US can't control it, it can't contain it, And when he tells companies like Google and Microsoft to stop hiring Indians, what he's really saying is, stop the rise of the Indian brain. It's getting too powerful. But history doesn't wait for permission, especially not when 1.4 billion people are building their own future and no longer asking for the keys to someone else's system. Let's not sugarcoat this. When a former US president stands on stage and says, "Don't hire Indians," it shakes the foundation of everything we thought we knew about globalization, meritocracy, and the so-called land of opportunity. So we need to ask, is this racism disguised as policy, or is it something colder, something more strategic? Let's break it down. Donald Trump didn't say, "Don't hire foreigners." He didn't say, "Stop outsourcing." He targeted a specific nationality, at a specific moment, on a stage full of corporate giants that depend on global talent. That isn't a slip of the tongue, that's intentional signaling. But is it racism? Not in the traditional sense. It's not about skin color, it's about economic identity. Indians are no longer seen as underdogs. They are seen by Trump and his circle as a rising intellectual elite. And in today's geopolitical climate, that makes them a target. What Trump is really doing here is fueling a form of economic nationalism, a strategy designed to win over a domestic audience that feels left behind by the digital revolution. In the American heartland, far from the glass towers of Silicon Valley, there are millions of Americans who lost jobs to automation, to offshoring, to restructuring. And when they look at the headlines, Google CEO, Sundar Pichai, Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, IBM appoints Indian American as head of AI, they feel replaced, not by robots, not by China, but by Indians. And Trump knows exactly how to play to that sentiment. He's telling his base, "I will bring jobs back. I will put Americans first. These companies owe loyalty to you, not to foreign engineers with strange last names." But here's the irony he'll never admit. The reason these companies dominate globally is because they hired Indian minds. They scaled faster. They innovated deeper. They built stronger teams. In fact, many of the tools that Trump himself used to run his own digital campaigns were developed, managed or optimized by Indian developers and data scientists. And yet, now they're being painted as the problem. This is not about loyalty, it's about leverage. Trump is not afraid that Indians are disloyal. He's afraid they are too good to control. Unlike other talent pools, Indian professionals don't just enter the system, they quickly rise inside it, and often take ownership of it. That kind of mobility makes them unpredictable. And in Trump's world, unpredictable means dangerous. So no, this isn't classic racism. This is economic warfare. And Indians are being cast as the most effective, efficient and quietly dominant competitors on the field. Artificial intelligence isn't just a technology, it's a battlefield. And the country that controls AI, controls the future, from finance to defense, from space to surveillance. That's the new global race. But here's the thing. America is no longer running it alone. Something radical is happening. The most critical breakthroughs in AI, the algorithms, the neural nets, the training data sets, are no longer coming solely from Harvard, Stanford, or MIT. They're coming from Bangalore, Hyderabad, and IITs across India. And that's what really keeps people like Donald Trump awake at night. Because for decades, the West enjoyed one major advantage: centralized control over innovation. The best ideas, the best labs, the best engineers, they all flowed into the US. But now, the model is breaking. Talent isn't migrating the way it used to. It's building ecosystems back home. India is investing heavily in AI, chip design, semiconductors, quantum computing, and supercomputers. Indian engineers are not just coding AI models, they're training them, scaling them, deploying them at scale, for Indian needs, on Indian infrastructure. And the results are clear. India is launching its own AI innovation hubs. Indian startups are building AI tools tailored to languages, agriculture, logistics, and even drone warfare. Indian origin researchers are leading global research papers, and some are heading billion-dollar AI divisions in the US and Europe. Now ask yourself, what happens when the world's largest democracy, filled with millions of trained engineers, becomes a tech sovereign? It no longer asks permission. It no longer needs American validation. It starts defining its own future. And for someone like Trump, who believes in controlling power, not sharing it, that's unacceptable. So he resorts to the only tool left in the political playbook: containment. If you can't beat the Indian mind, restrict its access, freeze hiring, tighten visas, use nationalism. But the truth, it's too late. India has already passed the point of dependency. We're no longer exporting brains. We're building industries. No longer asking to be in the room. We're designing the room. Whether it's AI that speaks 22 languages, or chips designed for subcontinental needs, the age of Western monopoly over innovation is. Trump senses that, and so do the corporations he's pressuring. Because the real fear is not that Indians will take American jobs. The real fear is that Indians will build better systems, without America at all. Beneath the politics, beneath the press conferences, beneath the slogans like America First, lies the real reason behind Trump's warning to Google and Microsoft. India is no longer playing by the old rules. For decades, Indian talent was seen as a resource, skilled, efficient, affordable. It powered American companies, built their infrastructure, scaled their platforms, and in return, America offered visas, jobs, and opportunity. But that equation has changed. The new India isn't chasing jobs, it's building independence, and it's doing it on every front. Strategic autonomy in foreign policy, balancing Russia, the US, and even China. Sovereignty in tech innovation, from AI to chip manufacturing. Growing dominance in space exploration, digital payments, and even defense tech. And most of all, Indians are no longer waiting for a Western stamp of approval. They're leading companies, founding unicorns, and solving billion-person problems on their own terms. That's the real threat. Because for people like Trump and the outdated systems they represent, control is everything, and control requires leverage. But here's the truth. America is rapidly losing leverage over India. When you can't control the talent, when you can't buy the loyalty, when you can't dictate the path, you try to block it. Telling Google and Microsoft to stop hiring Indians isn't about helping American workers. It's about slowing down India's global ascent before it becomes irreversible. But here's the irony. That moment has already passed. Today, India has one of the world's fastest growing startup ecosystems, thriving space agency, competing with NASA and SpaceX, an AI sector tailored to Indian languages, and data trade relations with both the West and the East, without choosing sides. It's no longer a follower. It's a player, a major one. And when Indian origin leaders, like Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Arvind Krishna, and Agarwal, are running American tech empires, the US system finds itself in a quiet identity crisis. Who owns the innovation? Who sets the rules? If Indians are creating the future, who gets to lead? That's the fear Trump is voicing, whether he realizes it or not. It's the fear of a reversed power structure, where Indian engineers don't just build the world's most advanced systems, they also decide how those systems are used, who benefits from them and who doesn't. That's not just job loss, that's geopolitical shift, and for those clinging to a unipolar world order, it's terrifying. So now you know. Donald Trump didn't just make a speech. He revealed a deep, unspoken fear shared by many in the West. Not fear of immigrants, not fear of job loss, but fear of something far more profound. The fear that India no longer needs permission, because for the first time in modern history, the Indian mind is no longer waiting for a visa. It's creating ecosystems. It's scaling revolutions. It's rewriting the rules of global power. Let's be clear. Trump's words were not a rejection. They were an acknowledgement, a sign that India is now too big to ignore, too smart to contain, and too fast to stop. When a superpower tells its largest companies not to hire Indian talent, it's not because that talent isn't good enough, it's because it's too good. And here's the most beautiful irony of all. The Indian mind didn't rise by conquering others. It rose by building, by solving, by learning, by adapting, and by never giving up. That resilience, that quiet, unstoppable, almost spiritual persistence, is what makes India the most underestimated superpower in the 21st century. Today you don't need to be in California to change the world. You can do it from Pune, from Hyderabad, from Bengaluru, from your laptop, because global influence is no longer about borders. It's about brilliance. And India, it has brilliance in abundance. Now we must understand this moment for what it really is. Not an insult but a signal. The West has begun to resist what it can no longer dominate. And that's your cue, not to protest, not to beg, but to build even faster, to scale even higher, to make the Indian brain not just the engine of the future, but the mind that defines it. So next time someone tells you Indians are being rejected, remember this: you're not being rejected, you're being recognized as a global threat to stagnation, and that's not something to fear, that's something to celebrate. The Indian century isn't coming, It's already here. If this message resonates with you, if you believe in the power of the Indian mind, leave a comment below. Where do you see India in 2047? Let the world know. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're setting the terms.